margins are not huge in clinic. And so this would be always the thing, like, should we get the shockwave machine? Like, are we going to be able to add a fee for it? What do other people do? Is that going to pay for itself? Is it going to have repeat clients? Can we service more of a population? I think it's non-negotiable. If you want to be great at whatever you're doing, you have to always be learning and growing and improving on what you're doing.
I'm happy to be sitting down today and talking with Allie Taylor, co-CEO and co-founder of Jane EHR. And we just realized we haven't talked in a number of years, so it's fantastic to catch up and talk all things business, creativity, and we actually are just talking about boredom. Maybe we'll come back to that in a moment, but Allie, it's great to reconnect with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think we look exactly the same 4 years later.
I'm going to go with a yes on that one.
Actually, better than ever.
There you go. I like it. So one of the things that we were discussing, and I think it's a great place to start, is around creativity. And when I think of building and growing, whether it's a private practice or a software company or any real business, there's an aspect of creativity that's really important. And I know culturally, human connection is a really important component of Jane. Beyond the software itself is the connection to the providers and the connection to the patients. I'll ask you kind of a little off the wall question to get started. When you think of creativity, what do you think of, and how does that apply or inform how you go about your workdays?
Yeah, it was interesting while you were saying all of those things. I was thinking about how a lot of what we do at Jane people think is creative because it's not often technically what a tech company does. But the funny thing is that it's actually just totally what clinics do and small businesses do. And so we get credited for being like, wow, you're just doing things so differently. And that's so creative and off the wall and like not normal. Mm-hmm. But it is actually normal in a completely different industry. And it's also very strange to me sometimes that these things get called special or creative. Mm-hmm. So it's just funny thinking about practice owners and the way that we build small businesses. Something that can be normal is in one space is considered creative somewhere else. And I really like cross-pollination of ideas like that. And often at work, I'm thinking about that all the time. Like I'll listen to a podcast or hear someone speak of like a completely different industry, or our customers will have these brilliant ideas of something, the way they're doing something in their practice, and you can bring that in. And I find sometimes people aren't very good at pulling out just the small little things that's unique that they could bring. They just put it all together and say, well, that's not me. We listen to a big like sales presentation and I could just turn off and be like, you know what, we don't do this. But they're talking about breaking down sales when they sell to like very, very big corporations and the way they do that. And I'm like, oh, well, we really should be doing a better job of making sure we understand the conversation for each individual customer before we do a demo. And I don't know that our team is having enough time to do that. So let's make sure we fix that. So you're bringing out little things that you can bring into place.
I know growth is an interesting thing in all business. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Jane has now been around it maybe a little over a decade, if I saw that.
I know.
Which is probably pretty wild to think back.
That is shocking.
How have you thought with and or dealt with growth? Because growth is a double-edged sword, right? There's a host of new challenges that come with that. And it also is great because you're fulfilling your mission of impacting as many people and practices as possible. But maybe how do you think about growth today? What's maybe a lesson or two you've learned along the way with a team that's grown pretty substantially since starting out with you and Trevor?
Yeah, that's funny that you say that growth is a double-edged sword. I think that's true. I think that's actually true about almost everything in life, that usually something that's a very positive is also something that you have to work hard against. But when we were very, very small, just like a couple of people, 3 people, and we were trying to talk to people about Jane and make them feel like Jane was a real company, we're like, trust us, we're going to be great. We're going to serve you and it's going to be fantastic. You used to have to kind of try to present bigger, like, let me just talk to my IT department of one person who's sitting next to me. You just have to try to make yourself seem a little bit like we're trustworthy, we're big enough. And then when you get big, it's like the opposite problem where now we're trying to make sure we still feel like available and connected and human, because the corporate side of things is really difficult to fight against as you start to scale into a larger number of people. And the reason for that is, I talk about this a lot, is that when somebody emails us, they're emailing a corporation like Jane. Like, we're just a company when they send an email. And it's not until we respond that you're having like a one-to-one, like a real person-to-person conversation. And that's when you start to have a human connection. But we have all these people. So now we're dependent on all of these people working in the company, building the same personality of Jane in every interaction. And that means how we build the product, how we support the customer, how we, like even our marketing materials, literally anytime Jane interacts with the world, we want that to be a consistent brand. And that's true with clinic too, I think. Like you want your admin staff, if you have them communicating in a way that represents your practice's brand and personality. And it's even hard to do within a small practice of just like 6 people, where you're like, we need to have consistent care here, and we need to have a level of a bar that we expect, and this is the way we talk and present, and these are the things we do and don't do, and so when you scale, we have over 600 people now, 650, and we're all remote and across multiple time zones, and even actually around the world. We have people in the US and the UK, and so trying to ensure that stays consistent while you scale is super challenging, but also it becomes our biggest strength when we do it well, because it's very hard to do. So it's hard to replicate.
For sure. And let's drill down into that, because one of the biggest compliments, I'm going to say, that I hear from docs that utilize Jane is the support, right? And the support team just being super helpful, super dialed in, and just really a massive difference from anything else they've experienced. When you think about kind of curating that team, right? And I think in most private practices, small businesses, pretty much everybody is customer facing for the most part, right? So customer service and support is a great analogy. In a larger scale business, maybe there's technical operations as well, in terms of the personality of the business. Is it mostly like hiring, training, a little bit of both? I mean, what are some of the key factors in your experience building and growing a team that was able to execute on, at a really high level, what you described, which is maintaining a really consistent, caring, and passionate connection to the user or the client in that case?
Yeah, well, I think it's always all of the above. Like it's always sort of doing everything as well as you possibly can. There's never, I'm not a believer in magic bullets. Here's the 3 ways to create blah, blah, blah. Or, every time you go and listen to somebody, it'll be like, grow your practice with a great website, or grow your practice by being good at rebooking or having good admin. It's like all of those things are necessary. You can't just do 1 or 2 things. You have to do everything. And for us I think it's really important that the heart of Jane is customer and product. Like if you have to say like, what do we focus on? What do we care about? Setting a really high bar for it. It's the customer relationship and working with the customer. We care deeply about the customer, and then creating a product that's helpful and delightful and amazing. And so scaling it's easy to scale the support team when that's your desire. So actually, when I talk to the support org, I talk about my own passion for the small business customer, and like how I think that especially after scaling a tech company, I am more convinced than ever that the small business is underrepresented with support, with connection to other people, like the way the government views them, even as an economic part, like a part of the economy. And there's no purchasing power across like all of these businesses. They're just not well supported. It's like these small business owners. It's a very, very difficult role. And I used to think a lot of my empathy for that came from being one, because I ran a business. I owned a clinic I actually just transitioned it a few years ago to the midwives that were working there. They've taken it over, and I'm so happy it's still running and doing great. It's a women's health clinic now. I'm so proud to see it continue on. But then I realized it's supporting. My mom was a physio who had her own practice and hated running business. And I like running business. So for me, running a business was like kind of fun, But for her, she hated it. And so every time someone calls, I'm like, you're talking to my mom. Like, this is my mom. Like, that's the level of service I expect to see in our company. So it's like a very consistent training program for sure that people go through, and the way we hire. And I think it really is just that there is an expectation we set that's a certain level, and if people don't meet it, that's not going to be successful within the company. So it does come from, I think, you set the bar. So even it's true in practice too. You set the bar for what's acceptable in the way your staff treat I've had this too with hiring front desk staff. Like if they can't reach the bar of the way I want my patients to be communicated with or treated, they don't stay. So you have to just be like, you set the bar, and you have to be super clear what it is, and then hold people accountable to it. And I think that's true no matter what the size of your company is.
Yeah. Well said. As if you were speaking to your mother. I like
My
that.
mom. I know. I'm like, that's my mom on the call. You better be nice to her.
I like it. So another thing that comes up often, I think, for practice owners and small business owners, and I think it applies with what you're doing as well, which is there's always a million things you could do, right? Specifically in the software realm, there's a million things that you could add on. There's a million features, opportunities, right? And from a small business owner perspective or a practicing chiropractor, maybe they're looking at, should I add this modality? There's always the opportunity to add things on. I guess from a strategic perspective, how do you think about where the cut points are, what to add on or not add on? And how do you think about really growing different revenue lines within a business while maintaining the level of service and then maintaining the level of product and system that you hope for?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, I don't think that there's an option not to. Like, I think I've heard a lot of people talk about, what's your greatest threat as a business to success? And I think in the world of software, I heard somebody say this once, and I'm just going to steal it and pretend it's my own, which it's not. But your greatest threat is always actually your own ability to innovate. It's not necessarily what a competitor is doing or what else is happening out there, but it is your own ability to innovate. And in practice, I saw this with practitioners who were more likely to be going out and continually learning and doing new things, were the ones that stayed the most actively engaged in their practice and enthusiastic and excited about what they were doing. And so it didn't actually matter what they were learning. They would bring that into their practice, and they'd be so excited for to teach it to patients and show patients, like, okay, I'm learning this thing. I'm so excited to show you. And that would actually really, that level of enthusiasm and engagement always made them a better practitioner and always build their caseload. Right. So I would say that adding or learning or continuing to do new things is not really, like, it's not negotiable for us. And I think any practitioner I saw that was successful, it wasn't negotiable for them either. They were just like, they couldn't help it. Like, I have to keep learning. And of course, there's always advancements happening in all of our industries. So staying on top of that is important. But then I do think that there's like a business case that you should always run. So like, what's the hard cost of that? How many people are likely to take it? Can I repay it? Because margins are not huge in clinic. And so this would be always the thing, like, should we get the shockwave machine? Like, are we going to be able to add a fee for it? What do other people do? Is that going to pay for itself? Is it going to have repeat clients? Can we service more of a population? So, but I think it's non-negotiable. I think if you want to be great at whatever you're doing, you have to always be learning and growing and improving on what you're doing. I don't know if that's the direction you were going with that question, but
no, I like it. I think that's great advice, because many times as private providers, let's say private practice, a solo provider, sometimes you can feel like an island, right? And sometimes you might not be learning and growing as much as maybe you did in the past because of you're either doing well, maybe you're a little complacent, maybe you're focusing on other things, or you just get into that habit of life. And yeah, you might do your CEUs, as mandated, but beyond that, you're not doing too much else. So I think it's great advice to say, hey, the more that you can learn, and not only will you benefit personally, but your business will benefit from that as a direct reflection of how much you're willing to grow, stretch, and learn.
Yeah, and I think you just stay more engaged in life in general too, as a person, when you're being well. I mean, we talked about this earlier about being bored and like giving yourself the space to learn new things and not be too like deep into the chaos of the everyday.
Yeah.
And sometimes boredom is required in order for you to reach into like finding the space to grow into something new.
Right.
So that's an interesting compliment.
Yeah. I think being able to step back or step away, that doesn't mean an extended period of time, but just the ability to take that mental break, and you're right, we were discussing a little bit earlier, can sometimes just lead to a lot of clarity. No matter how you approach that, you're mentioning yoga is a great opportunity for you to be able to kind of disconnect and reset your mind. For me, it is running or playing music, but I think it's really important from a private practice perspective for everybody to have that time where they can reset, reconnect, problem solve creatively. And it can feel like we're, head down, butt up, as they say, just like working on the people, but having whatever that is for you, the opportunity to take that step back and that break can really be meaningfully impactful in terms of your ability, tying back to where we started, to be creative, to problem solve, and to really think about your business in a new way.
I used to hate it when people would say that, especially early Jane or early practice where you're just working your butt off the whole time. You're like, there's no who else is going to do this work if
Right.
I step away? And they're like, we're on the business, not in the business. And I'm like, but the business needs to work. Like
Right.
there's a pass fail, like a moment there of like, there's no option other than working in the business. So I always thought it was funny when people would say that. I'd be like, but are you like, that like this isn't optional. Like I
Right.
have
Yeah.
and so we early on did go to some like accelerator programs and stuff trying to step away from the business. So it is important that you are very intelligent about how you choose what programs and what you do with that time so that it is actually effective. And then I find, this is why I say yoga and stuff. You do it outside work hours too.
Yep. What are you excited about personally, professionally? What are you looking
Oh
forward
my
to this
goodness.
year and beyond?
I found, so we were talking about, I think it's been 5 years since we talked. So I don't know what my role even looked like at the time when we last spoke about Jane or what we were doing, but it's fascinating. Like my role's obviously changed over time, from being the person that's doing every demo and talking to every customer and onboarding everybody, and which was the time that I felt the most effective and helpful, and I could connect my work directly to the success of the customer, and I found that a lot easier. And then I think as we've scaled and the job has become more leading through other people, and it's actually way harder to feel like that's worthwhile. Like I'm always just like, is this even helpful? It takes so long for the impact to be seen at the customer level, which is really where my heart is like are we serving the customer as well?
Yep.
But right now I'm so excited about a lot of the groundwork that we've been laying in order to create more of these features that people are asking for. And it's funny how everybody asks for something different. I don't know if you've seen our feature request, or our feature request list is ridiculously long and detailed. And one of the reasons that I first put I was like, we need a tool that does this is because I'd be taking calls and people would ask for a feature and they'd be like, I can't believe you don't have this. Like everybody does this. And I'd be like, literally nobody else does this. Like you're the only person I've talked to that ever wants this feature, but you think everybody acts the same way. So I'm like, if I have a feature request list, it'll be helpful because then people can go in and see whether what they want is actually what everyone else wants. And I thought that was going to happen, but it actually didn't. Like even people who have like their feature request has like 2 votes and they'll still be messaging. Like, why haven't you built this? Like clearly it's the most important thing you could be building, which I find funny. But I think a lot of what we're doing right now does allow us to continue to work on the things that people really want to see in Jane. So I'm so excited about that. And then we also have this like a partnership and a more open strategy where people can build on. So there is a potential future here where people literally can just build apps or features that are designed just to work with Jane's customer base, and then they can create their own businesses selling like into Jane's ecosystem, which I'm super excited about that too. It would be very cool to me if Jane created other successful businesses serving the healthcare community in all the different ways that people want really specific feature sets that we might not be able to build for the whole because it doesn't make as much sense.
Yep.
So I'm so excited about that. There's some great integrations coming that I think will make our practitioners' lives better. My favorite is a win-win-win. It's when we can partner with a company that offers a service. We can offer it for a less expensive price because we do it across bulk. And then both us and that company benefits in some way. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. Everyone's very invested in the partnership, and we can offer it at a discount to our customers. That's like my favorite when we can do that. So there's a lot of big opportunities like that coming up.
I like it. I will be, as a user myself and somebody that has software, I will be first in line. I really appreciate you coming on. And for everybody listening and watching, I'm going to encourage you, if you are looking to just improve the efficiency of your practice, connect with the Jane team, have a conversation, and see the difference between what you're doing today and what things could look like tomorrow. We'll drop some links down below and all that. But Allie, thank you so much for coming on and chatting today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for watching this video on the Evidence-Based Chiropractor channel. If you don't want to miss a single thing, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get notifications of every video we put out, and we put out new content each and every week. So be sure to subscribe today.